Always check your children's Halloween candy. Always. I'm not saying this to fearmonger. To tell you the truth, I realize that most of the candy handed out on the holiday is likely purchased at Walmart the day before and shoved into a plastic pumpkin-shaped bowl. You probably have realized that most sane people don't poison candy or put glass in it or whatever cautionary urban legend you've heard. The only guy who did do that did so to his own son. So those neighbors of yours, don't treat them like criminals. They're just trying to innocently give the kiddos some sweets. This warning regards a phenomenon that has no apparent origin. What I mean is, no one is really sure of where it comes from. The candy in question isn't even so. You can't purchase it at any stores, and looking it up online results in no results. The candy, this aforementioned phenomenon, appears to be that of a cinnamon jawbreaker, not to be confused with the Atomic Fireball brand or any other similar sweet. It may resemble a red-tinted gumball or a red lollipop with no stick. The point being, it's rather generic in appearance, which makes it tricky to spot the real deal. The candy is sometimes branded under the HH Sweets Company, a corporation that doesn't exist, at least not one registered by any agency since 1999. If you search the internet, you might find some HH Sweets businesses, but I assure you they aren't the real deal. Merely a namesake coincidence. If the label carries the HH name, beneath it a tagline will read something to the effect of, hot as hell, sweet as heaven. Not all of the candies sport the branding, but it certainly helps to spot it. This is why I advise if you find yourself or your kids with an unmarked red candy, the safest bet is to throw the sucker away. Documentation of this phenomenon only dates back to 2007, but there is the possibility that it's gone on for far longer. As of this recording, a known 9 people have ingested the candy, 4 of which being children under the age of 18. Each case has happened on October 31st, with the most cases occurring being 2016, with a total of 3 victims. The only clues as to the candy's appearance and branding is through the eyes of witnesses, and subsequent investigations of any nearby and unopened candy wrappers. Each of the victims' corpses, aside from the heads, remain untouched. The heads, however, are where things get strange. Each of the heads is completely burnt, like a used match. This would make identification of the victims troublesome, except for the fact that fingerprint analysis lent itself fittingly to the nature of these deaths, considering the hands of the deceased were completely intact. None of the victims were related in any way, with the only exception being a father and his 9-year-old daughter, Andy and Mary Kay Winfield from Lexington, Virginia. All of the others shared no relation, other than the aforementioned candy. An eyewitness report from Brevard, North Carolina, documented the full story behind the mysterious death of a 12-year-old boy, Shane Davis, who died on the Halloween of 2009.
I was leaving the pharmacy at around 8:30 when it happened. He was walking down the block in the zombie costume. I didn't even notice him at first because it was dark and the costume was dark, but then there was this flash of orange light, like someone lighting a candle. I turned around and this heat wave hit me in the face, and the smell, oh God, it smelled like cooked meat. His head was on fire. There were people screaming, but there was nothing we could do. He screamed only for a moment, then he hit the pavement. I'll never unsee it. There were rumors it was a hex from a witch or something. I mean, I'm not a superstitious man, but when you see something like that, superstition doesn't seem too far off, you know?
Similar reports were documented for many of the other victims. Shortly after ingesting the candy, the victim's head would burst into flames, and soon thereafter the victim would succumb to the injury and die. Many rumors and theories have since popped up surrounding the deaths and the candy. Many include witches and spells, but some have garnered significant following beyond regional folklore. As a result of the 1782 execution of Henry Hyson Cassidy, H.H. Cassidy, a candy maker from Onnecock, Virginia, the site of the first documented death from 2007. Cassidy, a local candy maker, was placed on trial for the disappearances of 2 young girls from the neighboring town. Despite having no apparent motive for abducting the 2 young girls, the candy maker was charged as a reasonable suspect, having access to sweets for alluring the children. Following a local investigation where one of the girls' bodies was discovered with candy in her pocket, Cassidy was charged with the murders and sentenced to death. Children from the town, who once loved the sweets made by the candy maker, began calling Cassidy the Witch of Onnecock, making him one of the earliest male witches of legend. Being found guilty in a hasty trial, Cassidy was sentenced to death by molten metal, a process considered barbaric, except in a case of an accused witch. Cassidy, who swore his innocence until his death, had a molten metal ball dropped into his throat. While a quick death, it was certainly not painless. The townsfolk remarked that justice was served on that day, and the body was buried in a shallow grave. Given that Andy and Mary Kay Winfield were also from Virginia, many speculated that the spirit of Cassidy returned to punish those responsible for his death, using his signature candy as a way to torment the descendants of his accusers. The name, too, H.H. Cassidy, would explain the name on the wrappers, H.H. Sweets. Another popular theory is usually referred to as the jack-o'-lantern story. The story goes that a man known as Stingy Jack tricked the devil on multiple occasions, resulting in his banishment from hell as well as heaven, as he was a trickster at heart. The man, forced to roam the earth, lit coal within a turnip and has been using it ever since to light his eternal path. The story, clearly rooted in the Halloween tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns, has been used to explain the candy too. Stingy Jack, as he's referred, seeks out souls to join him in his eternal punishment. The candy, which burns the heads of its consumers, turns them into a somewhat crude jack-o'-lantern. This would explain the fiery demise of the victims, as well as its connection to the celebration of Halloween. In conjunction with the Stingy Jack narrative, there are some who conclude the candy is the work of the devil himself, tormenting unsuspecting holiday celebrators with death, merely for the fun of it. A rather sick trick, yes, but then again, mischief is commonplace in the celebration of Halloween. As for this theory, the HH label would stand for Hell's Hottest, or some other variation of the Hell alliteration. Despite these varying backstories to the candy, there is a far more grounded explanation that many have subscribed to. Rather than reading into the H.H. Sweets mythology, some conclude that H.H. Sweets is precisely what it claims to be, a candy company. The motive for committing these crimes is, at large, still a mystery, but this theory cuts out the claims of ghosts and devils, suggesting instead that a select few sickos had the willpower to conjure up sweets with the intent to kill. In the end, no one theory is correct, at least not one that can be confirmed by traditional means. A candy that is, for lack of a better term, supernatural, can only be explained by the supernatural, making it extremely difficult to verify any of the information regarding it. If you wish to avoid the grisly results of the candy, it is advised you always check your children's Halloween candy. Better yet, avoid the trick-or-treating tradition altogether. Or, if you're highly concerned, perhaps it would be best to simply skip Halloween altogether. The air was warm, the sun was shining, and all of Ponyville was having a glorious day. The town square was bustling and crowded. Busy ponies were making their busy way through the streets. All the pony folk seemed to have somewhere to be. All except Rainbow Dash. Her place was in the sky. She freely tore through the air, speeding one way and the next. She buzzed the treetops and raced the wind. The Pegasus swooped over a schoolyard, much to the delight of the children. Climbing several hundred feet, she dove, going as fast as she could. Seconds before hitting the ground, her wings flew open and she took off back into the clear blue. Rainbow Dash felt alive. Then she remembered that she had somewhere to be. She was supposed to meet with Pinkie Pie in 5 minutes. She'd gotten so caught up in her exercises that she nearly forgot. Pinkie had asked Dash to meet her at Sugar Cube Corner at 3. She didn't say why or what they'd be doing, but Dash knew that with Pinkie, it could be anything. She wasn't sure if she really wanted to go, though. She was so engaged with her stunts that she thought about blowing Pinkie off to continue flying. Dash's conscience got the better of her. She knew that it would hurt Pinkie's feelings. After all, she said it was going to be something special just for the two of them. She considered it and thought, why not? What did she have to lose? Heck, it might be more pranking. Pinkie might have found a bunch more fun stuff to pull off on folks. They had so much fun the last time. Dash kicked it into overdrive, mostly to make for lost time, and sped to her appointment. When she walked into the store, she was immediately greeted with her host bouncing in excitement. "Yay! You're here! You're here! I've been waiting all day," said the jumping pony. Sorry if I'm a little late, Pinkie Pie. I was doing my afternoon exercises and I lost track of time, Dash apologized. Pinkie giggled and responded, her tone gleefully reassuring. Oh, that's okay. You're here now. What's a few more minutes? I've been so excited, thinking about all the fun stuff we're gonna do. I haven't stopped bouncing since I woke up. I mean, I almost forgot to breathe since I've been so happy. Dash gave a slightly uncomfortable laugh. She always appreciated Pinkie's friendly, outgoing way of life, but her overabundant enthusiasm almost creeped her out. Dash was polite, however. If Pinkie had got this worked up, then it must be good, whatever it was. So, you ready to get started, Rainbow Dash? I've got everything all ready, Pinkie said. Dash psyched herself up. You betcha, Pinkie. What do you got planned? We gonna prank somebody? I got a couple of good ones I've been thinking about. Or maybe you got some stunts you think I should try. Or maybe making cupcakes, Pinkie happily announced. Baking? Dash was disappointed. Pinkie, you know I'm not good at baking. Remember last time? Oh, that's not a problem at all. I only need your help making them. I'll be doing most of the work, Pinkie explained. Dash thought about it for a second and replied, Well, alright, I guess that's okay. What exactly do you need me to do? That's the spirit. Here. Pinkie handed Dash a cupcake. Dash was puzzled. I thought I was helping you bake. You will be. I made this one just for you before you got here. So, is this like taste testing or something? Dash asked. Sorta, Pinkie said. Dash shrugged and popped the pastry into her mouth. She chewed a bit and swallowed. Not bad. Okay, now what? Dash asked. Now, Pinkie informed, you take a nap. Upon hearing that, Dash felt lightheaded. Her world spun, and seconds later she dropped to the floor. When Dash regained consciousness, she found herself in a dark room. She tried to shake her head, but found that a taut leather strap kept it firmly in place. She struggled to move, but the braces around her chest and limbs glued her to a rack formed from a series of sturdy planks, which spread her legs wide apart. Dash's wings were the only part of her not tied down, and they fluttered frantically while she struggled to escape. As she writhed, Pinkie jumped into her line of sight. Oh goody, you're awake. Now we can get started, she gleefully stated. She was pushing a cart covered with a cloth. Pinkie, what's going on? I can't move, Dash said in a worry. Well, duh, you're tied down, Pinkie chitted. That's why you can't move. I didn't think you needed to be told that. But why? What's happening? I thought you said I was going to help make cupcakes. You are helping. You see, I ran out of the special ingredient, and I need you to make more. Special ingredient? Dash was now breathing heavily and starting to panic. What special ingredient? Pinkie giggled and responded. You silly. Dash's eyes widened, her face contorted in fear. Then she started to laugh. Wow, you really got me there, Pinkie Pie. I mean, tricking me into thinking I was gonna get made to a cupcake? I gotta tell you, this is the best prank yet. You win. You're the best. Pinkie giggled even more. Aw, thanks, Dash, but I haven't done pranks today, so I can't accept your praise. Dash was struggling again. Pinkie, come on, this isn't funny. Then why were you laughing? Pinkie grabbed the cloth and whipped it off the cart. The top of the tray contained various sharp medical tools and knives carefully organized and ready. There was a medicine bag and several other objects next to them. Dash was now in full panic mode. She was starting to hyperventilate. Her mind was racing as she tried to reason with the pink pony. You can't do this, Pinkie. I'm your friend. I know you are, and that's why I'm so happy I've got you here. We get to share your last moments together. Just you and me. She was skipping again. But the other ponies will wonder where I am. When the clouds pile up, they'll come looking for me, and then you'll get found out. Dash was desperate. Oh, Dash, Pinkie said. Don't worry. There are plenty of Pegasus to take care of a few clouds, and besides, no pony will find out. I mean, how long do you think I've been doing this? And with that, the light suddenly came to life and showcased the rest of the room. Oh, gosh, no. Dash reeled in horror at the image presented to her. The room was decorated with a typical but twisted Pinkie Pie flair. Colorful streamers of dried entrails danced around the ceiling. Brightly painted skulls of all sizes were stuck on the walls, and organs done up in pastels, filled with helium, tied to the backs of chairs. The tables and chairs were made out of bones and flesh of past ponies. Dash cringed at the centerpiece of the table nearest to her. The heads of 4 foals. Their eyes closed like they were sleeping, wearing party hats made from their own skin. She recognized one of them as Apple Bloom's classmate. Her eyes darted back and forth and then glazed up at the patchwork banner hanging from the rafters. Made from several pony hides, the words, "Life is a Party," were scrawled in red. Dash's attention was stolen by a party horn unfurling and tickling her nose. She saw Pinkie Pie standing in front of her. The party pony was wearing a dress quilted from cutie marks. On her back fluttered 6 Pegasus wings, all different colors. As she skipped in excitement, her necklace of unicorn horns loudly clacked together. "Like it?" she asked. "I made it myself." Dash pleaded. "Pinkie, please, I'm sorry if I did anything to you. I didn't mean it. Please let me go. I promise I won't tell any pony." "Oh, Dash, you didn't do anything. It's just that your number came up and, well, I don't make the rules. We can't turn back now." Rainbow Dash was tearing up. How could this be happening? "Aw, don't be sad, Dash," Pinkie said. "Look, this'll cheer you up. I brought you a friend." Out of seemingly nowhere, Pinkie displayed a blue and yellow painted skull. It was about pony size, but it had a very defining feature. A beak. Dash was freaking out. Is that? "Hey, Dash, let's hang together. These ponies are lame-os. Dweebs, dweebs, dweebs," Pinkie mimicked. "I caught her right before she left town. Remember when I left the party for about 20 minutes? That wasn't enough time to play with her, of course. I had to wait till after the party to do that, but boy, am I glad I did. It was worth it for the flavor alone. Griffins taste like 2 animals at once. It's amazing. I know she didn't have a number like everyone else in Ponyville, but when was I going to get another chance to try a griffin? In hindsight, I probably should have asked where she came from so I can get more, but I forgot. I'll tell you what, though. She was quite the fighter. Lasted a long time, which was fun for me. I got the chance to play with somebody other than a pony and try new things. It's too bad she had such a potty mouth. She said so much bad stuff, I had to take her tongue out. You know, bad language makes for bad feelings, Dash." Dash didn't have anything to say. She just sobbed and writhed. "Well," Pinkie said, putting the skull down, "that's enough reminiscing. It's time to begin." She picked up a scalpel and walked over to Dash's right flank. Without any flair, she placed the blade an inch above her cutie mark and started a circular cut around it. Her lungs were working overtime. Dash shouted in pain and tried desperately to pull away, but her braces held her still. Finishing the incision, Pinkie grabbed the curved skinning knife from the tray. She worked it under the skin and sliced the hide away from the muscle. Dash ground her teeth as she tearfully watched as her flesh came off. Pinkie then moved to the other side and completed the other flank. Once she was done, Pinkie held up both cutie marks in front of her friend and started waving them like pom-poms. Dash just whimpered. Her thighs burned. Placing the skin down, Pinkie selected the large butcher knife and walked behind Rainbow Dash. "Hope you don't mind. I think I'm gonna wing it now." Pinkie laughed. She grabbed the left one and played with it for a second. Then, stretching the wing out, she brought the blade down at the base. Instantly, Dash screamed and thrashed her appendage. The movement threw off Pinkie Pie's aim. She tried to hit the mark again but missed wide and put a huge slice in Rainbow's back. "Dash, you gotta stay still or I'll keep missing." She took another whack and hit the target. She swung again and again, blood spraying into the air, but realized she wasn't getting anywhere. The blade just wasn't going through the bone. I guess I forgot to sharpen it. I'll try something else," she stated as she tossed the knife over her shoulder, the blade embedding itself in the table. The crying Rainbow Dash heard the sound of a metal box opening and closing. "Got it! Say, Dash, why do they call it a hacksaw? It doesn't hack. Hacking is what I was doing with the knife. This is a saw. I don't get it." Pinkie placed the tool over the last attempt. It effortlessly sailed through the bone and skin. The painful feeling of the teeth biting into her made Dash want to vomit. She watched helplessly as her wing flew over her head and landed with a fluff on the table. Pinkie moved the next and started sawing. Dash didn't struggle this time. She'd given up trying to fight and just cried. Then the sawing abruptly paused. Pinkie was only halfway done, the wing hanging off by only a sliver. "Hey, Dash," she piped up. "Think fast." Suddenly, she yanked the wing as hard as she could. The bone snapped, but the skin held tight. The pull ripped a long strip of flesh down Dash's back to her rump. The unexpected trauma caused her body to seize. She felt the warm release between her legs as her pelvis tensed up. Dash's loud, unending melody of pain filled the room. Unable to catch her breath, she blacked out. She awoke with a gasp. The stench of her urine filled her mucus-caked nostrils. She saw a very pouty Pinkie Pie removing the adrenaline needle from her chest. Stomping her hooves, the frustrated Pinkie lashed out. "Didn't anybody teach you any manners? It's very rude to fall asleep when someone invites you over to spend time with them. How would you like it if I came over to your house and went to sleep?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Dash, you're boring. I think I'll take a nap." "You think I like always doing this by myself? I told you how excited I got when I found out you were next. I was excited to have a friend be here with me while I worked, but no, you've got to be inconsiderate. You know, I thought you were tough. I thought you could handle anything. I've had foals stand up better than you. Do I have to baby you? Huh? Is that how you want me to remember you? As a baby?" She stopped to catch her breath. Dash blinked and softly cried. Her back was on fire. Pinkie then popped something red into her mouth and began to chew. She noticed Dash was staring at her. "What?" she asked. "Oh, this?" holding up another piece. "Well, while you were asleep, I got a little impatient and helped myself to a sample. I got it from your leg. You're not bad. You want to try some?" Without waiting for a response, she shoved the strip of meat into the revolted Rainbow Dash's mouth. She immediately spit it out. Pinkie picked it up. "If you didn't want it, you could have said no." Then she ate the discarded, snotty morsel. "It's not like you haven't had it before." Swallowing, she turned her attention to the small can on the tray. She removed the lid, revealing that it was filled with burning coals. Sitting on top of the fire were several large nails. Dash began to panic again. Pinkie picked up the can and walked over to Dash's left, carefully picking up a nail and grabbing a hammer. She positioned the spike at the seam between her leg and her hoof. "No! Pinkie Pie! No!" Dash screamed. "No! No!" The hammer came down and the nail punctured under her skin. The white-hot burning was too much. Dash pulled and thrashed at the brace. Her skin rubbed and tore. Pinkie tried to line up another one but couldn't find her aim. She let out a frustrated grunt. When she pulled the hammer back to take a wild swing, Dash burst out crying and begging, "Please stop! Please, please stop!" Pinkie rolled her eyes. Putting the hammer back down, she walked back in front of her friend. She stared pensively at the broken Pegasus. Gilda didn't even cry this much when she stuck that live parasprite down her throat. Pinkie thought for a minute about what to do next. Then there was a sudden spark in her imagination. She grabbed the gear wheel on the rack and laid Rainbow Dash on her back. She moved Dash's hind legs, bringing the can with her. Pinkie picked up the hammer again and she drove a searing piece of metal into the bottom of Dash's hoof. Dash screamed again. Pinkie put one into the other hoof. Next, she located the small generator on the tray. Tying the copper wires to the nails, she gave Dash a wink and flipped the switch. Electricity rocketed through Dash's body. The blue pony reacted immediately. Body seized, muscles struck taut. Her hips thrust skyward and her eyes rolled back. She let out a deep, throat-shredding cry. Pinkie giggled and danced in place. She turned up the juice. Dash convulsed uncontrollably. Her bladder emptied once more. After about 5 minutes, Pinkie shut off the power. The area smelled lightly of cooked flesh and burnt enamel. She put Dash upright again and tried to snap the delirious and drooling pony back to attention. "Dash! Dash! Wake up!" Rainbow Dash managed to give her a modicum of weak acknowledgement. Pinkie reached into the medicine bag and pulled out a large syringe. "All right, time for the last round." Dash looked at the needle, and Pinkie took that as a question as to what it was. "Something to take the pain away," she informed as she walked around to Dash's ruined backside. She stuck the needle into the lower part of her spine. Dash flinched. Coming to the front again, she told her friend, "In a few minutes, you won't be able to feel anything below your rib cage. Then you'll be able to stay awake and watch the harvest." Dash started to cry again. "Pinkie Pie." She trembled out. "Yeah? I want to go home. Dash openly sobbed. Yeah, I can see wanting to do that, the party pony replied. Sometimes I just want to give up, say I'm done with this mess, and go to bed. But you know what? You can't shrug off your responsibilities. You gotta pull yourself up and meet the challenges head on. That's the only way you're gonna get ahead in life. Dash cried. Minutes passed and the drug took effect. Dash was numb from her chest to her flanks. Aware of this, Pinky approached her with her scalpel. With only a smiling glance to Dash, she made a long cut across her pelvis just above her crotch. Moving up her body, she drew a similar incision under her ribs. One final cut was made down her stomach, connecting the first two. Looks like I got my eye on you, Rainbow Dash. With a moist, gooey sound, the new door flapped open. The sight of her own organs and the lack of feeling caused Dash's breathing to intensify. Pinky sliced open the abdominal sac and grabbed the large intestines, separating it from the rest of the digestive tract and pulling them from the forming cavity. Pinky was getting jovial and started making jokes. Dash, growing weaker from the new source of blood loss, tried to shut out the comedy act. Pinky was laughing. Look at me, I'm Rarity, she said, slinging the tube around her neck and spreading blood in all directions. Isn't my new scarf so pretty? Reaching back in, she cut the smaller intestine off the bowels. Squeezing out the excess excrement, Pinky filed it through her teeth and dragged it back and forth. Dentists say you gotta floss every day, Dash. Rainbow Dash was barely aware of what was going on anymore. The shock was causing her to fade. Pinky got disappointed, diving back into the guts, and ramped up her routine. Aw, don't go yet, Dash. She started pulling out the rest of her organs, stopping at each one. I know I can be a real pancreas, but you know I'm just kidding with you. You really gotta learn to liver it up. Boy, these jokes are getting bladder. Guess you gotta develop a stomach for them. She placed the discarded body parts into a bucket, keeping the last one for a bit longer. Ooh, bagpipes, she said, placing the tube in her mouth and the organ in her armpit. A spurt of acid hit her tongue. Ew! Oh hey, there's your cupcake, Rainbow Dash. Dash didn't hear her. She had slipped from consciousness minutes ago. Pinky, not satisfied yet, hit her with another adrenaline shot. Dash woke up for the last time, her heart jumping. Her blood flowed out faster. It wouldn't be long now. Pinky put Dash down on her back and straddled her chest, scalpel ready. You know, Dash, I'm disappointed. I thought you would have lasted longer. I really wanted to spend more time with you before we got here, but I guess it's my fault. I should have taken it a little slower. Oh well, it was really nice knowing you, Rainbow Dash. The blade sunk into the blue one's throat and worked its way up to her chin. Coming back down, it circled around her neck. The last thing Dash felt was her skin being cut away from her skull. The metal scraping her teeth. Then she was gone. Pinkie Pie stared into the mirror. She did a really good job, even keeping the eyelids. She winked. Dash winked back. Pinkie smiled. But still, she was sad that her friend was now gone. It only lasted 50 minutes, not nearly as long as she wanted. She looked back at the cadaver hanging there in the center of the room, the last of its fluids draining into the pan. Yep, no more Rainbow Dash. Then Pinkie cocked her head. She was starting to take notice of the fact that there really wasn't that much damage. In fact, she began to say, I think... An idea exploded into her head. She was good at sewing and she had all the pieces. All she had to do was put her back together. Yeah, just get some stuffing and bingo, she'd have Rainbow Dash forever. In fact, that's what she'd do for all her friends when their numbers came up. She was so excited, she skipped over to the body with the Skinner to get started. The cupcakes can wait. Pinkie had a friend to make. Silver Spoon suddenly woke up. She was on her back and couldn't move. She couldn't see. Where was she? Freaking out, she was just about to scream when the pony from the bakery appeared in front of her. Hi, she giggled. Where am I? What's going on? The frightened little foal asked. Oh, well, you see, your number came up and I gotta make cupcakes, Pinkie explained. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Oh, nothing. I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. It'll be over soon. She approached the girl, scalpel at the ready, when a small voice called out from behind. Miss Pinkie, what do you think you're doing? She paused and turned back to look at Apple Bloom. The yellow baby pony walked up to her with an angry look on her face. Silver Spoon started to feel relieved. I can't believe you're doing this, she pouted. I thought you said this one was gonna be mine. Pinky apologized. Oops, sorry about that. Guess I forgot. Here you go. She handed the blade over. Apple Bloom climbed on the table and stood over her prey. Silver Spoon tried to struggle. She stared in fear at Apple Bloom in her apron, the pink apron with a shiny tiara on it. Silver Spoon started to cry. Apple Bloom grinned and opened her mouth. Hey, Silver Spoon, guess who's gonna be a blank flank? Okay, X or whatever creepy board this makes its way onto. I put it here because I thought it'd get to the most people to whom it's relevant. If you're one of those people who are inherently drawn to horror, you're in real danger. I don't know what it is exactly, and I don't pretend to know everything that's going on, and in fact, I, myself, used to be drawn to the more realistic, non-supernatural horror stories, but, well, let me explain. About a year ago, I was up at 3 in the morning. You know, that part of the night where you're so deep into it, it feels like it will never end. Anyway, I was up and clicking around, looking for a good creepy story I hadn't read before. Really getting myself freaked out. You know the feeling, I'm sure. You like the feeling. That's the problem. Anyway, I'm reading and I heard a pattering sound coming from the kitchen. I had a cat, so I just assumed it was her, but then I glanced at my bed and my cat was there. Now, I'd been freaking myself out for a while there, so I was nearly trembling with fear as I opened my bedroom door. I live alone in a single bedroom apartment with just a bedroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a bathroom. My bedroom door opens up to the kitchen. It was pitch black, the moonlight gleaming off the floor. I strained my ears and listened. I heard nothing. I admonished myself for being so paranoid. It was just random house noises, right? Or maybe a mouse in the walls. I was about to turn around and head back into my room when I heard it again. I saw something scatter across the floor in the kitchen, heading for the bathroom. It was small, but it was definitely not a rat. The limbs were way too long. The torso was far too high off the ground, and the way it moved quickly, but so awkwardly. In any other circumstance, I might have reacted differently. As it was, I was scared shitless. So, I basically froze for like 10 minutes. It was the size of that thing that convinced me to move. No matter how weird or fucked up it was so much smaller than me. It couldn't have been that dangerous, right? So I grabbed the broom that I had leaning against the wall of the kitchen, flipped on the lights, and headed back towards the bathroom. I realized with the lights on, I was barely scared at all. More intrigued. I opened the bathroom door. Before I turned on the light, I made a quick scan. Nothing. I flicked the switch and looked around. Still nothing. I even looked at the ceiling. I threw the shower curtain open. Nothing. Still. What could it have been? My mind started inventing explanations. It definitely had 4 limbs. Maybe it was a big-ass spider who had lost 4 of its legs somehow? That could explain the awkward movement. It was good enough for me. I was about to go back to bed when I thought, on a whim, to use my broom to poke behind the toilet, between the wall and the base of the seat. When I did, it hit something solid, and it scurried out. It looked like a tiny human. It was pale as a maggot with dirty gray streaks running along its skin. It moved on all 4s, with long, thin fingers that grasped the ground. Its skull was completely bald, and it had no eyes. The skin looked like it had been torn away from the lower half of its face, leaving the teeth and gums exposed. It looked up at me, pointed its face in my general direction anyway, and then scurried up quickly to the side of the bath and down into the drain. It moved in quick bursts like a spider and climbed straight up smooth surfaces like one too. After it disappeared down the drain, I just stood there, frozen, broom handle still in my hand, for a good 5 minutes. I was scared shitless. I slowly backed out of the bathroom, closed the door, and then stuffed a blanket in the crack between the floor and the door, fearing that it might come out. Then I sat in my bed and wondered what I could do. It wasn't like I could call the police or even tell any of my friends. It's not like they believe me. So what did I do? I made a thread on X. This was quite a while ago, almost a year. You might not even remember it. It wasn't anything special, and it didn't even get that many responses before falling off the boards. I guess people thought I was just joking, which, really, I would have thought the same thing. My thread, in retrospect, sounds exactly like the type of threads I hate. But aside from all that OP is a fag and Sage responses, there was a different one. I've seen them too, man. Email me. Along with an email address that I'm not going to give out here. So, I emailed this guy, right? Right away, he responded, and we started up a conversation on IRC. He introduced himself as John, and he told me a very similar story. One night a few months ago, he was watching a horror movie. He heard a noise, got up, and saw a small, pale man, but his was a bit bigger. He said it was the size of a cat. But he also told me one other thing that got me worried. He said that I'd see more of them. He said that ever since he saw the first one, he's been seeing more and more of them. He'd even see them in the street during the day. They were everywhere, he said. And once you noticed the first one, it got a lot easier to see all the other ones. He had no idea what they were. He hadn't figured out their behavior yet. He said that usually when he saw them or heard them in his own home, he was either watching a movie or reading some creepy story. So they usually freaked him out, but he had never actually seen them do anything terrible. Just scurry out of sight. But, he said, some of them got pretty big, and not all of them look exactly the same. I didn't sleep that night. But over the next week and those that followed, I found that I did get used to them. I did see more of them. I'd glimpse them out of the corner of my eye, or see the retreating rear end of one crawling into a gutter pipe, or see their tiny faces staring out at the street from the I'd glimpse them out of the corner of my eye, or see them I'd glimpse them out of the corner of my eye, or see the retreating rear end of one crawling into a gutter pipe, or see their tiny faces staring out at the street from the sewers. Some, it seemed, weren't even trying to hide. I live in a small city in Rhode Island. On my way to work one day, I take the bus, I was looking out at the window and saw a pretty large one, as large as a medium-sized dog, trotting along the sidewalk. People were just walking by it. Actually, I think those people saw it as a sick, hairless dog. I'd always email John and tell him about all the appearances I saw. I even tried to catch them on camera, but they always heard the mechanical whirring and darted away before my camera could take a picture. I told myself I'd have to take a picture of one of the bigger, slower ones. But either way, as the weeks wore on, I became more and more used to them. Sure, they were creepy as shit, and I could never sit down on the toilet and enjoy a long crap anymore because I was paranoid they'd crawl up into the bowl and bite my ass. But they weren't really doing anything harmful. They unnerved me, but so did big spiders. I could live with them. John called them the Gristers, because he said they reminded him of the Grister meme on X for some reason. I'm pretty sure he meant the Grifter meme, but the name Grister stuck. I continued my exchanges with John, but I noticed he was becoming more and more tense. It was hard to tell over the text, but really, that was the only way to put it. I just figured that once the novelty of a shared experience had worn off, we didn't really have much to talk about. John wasn't really my type. He was a steroid-pumping bodybuilder near my town who lived with his mother. But we started discussing Grister behavior, and he said his was starting to act a bit more differently than the ones I saw. He'd wake up at night and they'd be perched at the end of his bed, staring at him with their eyeless faces. They wouldn't scurry away anymore. He said he woke up one time because one of them had actually started touching his face. That seemed unnerving. This whole time I'd been putting out inquiries on the internet to see if anyone else had experienced this phenomenon. I couldn't be the only one, but no one came forward. On X, most of my threads about the subject got saged, so eventually I stopped asking. But I have an inquisitive mind. I wanted to know what these things did, what exactly they were. I even wanted to capture one. I left out food and mouse traps, but none of these things ever went for it. One night I was walking home from work alone. I work at a call center for a police charity, and my house is about 6 miles away. I had to stay late, so there was no bus to take me home, and I didn't have a car, so I had to walk. Anyway, I was walking past some old abandoned brick houses when I heard some weird low groan. That's when I happened to notice that there were a lot more Gristers than usual here. They were mostly ignoring me, but they were scurrying in and out around one particular house. The groaning sound seemed to be coming from the alley beside it. Now, a lot of Gristers were creepy enough, even without that low groaning noise, but what made me decide to investigate? I don't know. Morbid curiosity? I thought that the groaning came from some wounded animal or something. So, I approached the side of the house, noting that the windows were boarded up. The groaning, I should have known that it was no animal. It was a low, creaking, gurgling sound. It didn't sound like any fucking animal I knew. So I snuck down the alley, and when I saw what was making the noise, I nearly pissed myself. It was a fat, humongous grister, at least 8 feet wide, completely unable to move, with rolls of fat hanging down over its legs. It had no neck, just 14 chins leading up to its macabre exposed jaw. Dirty drool ran down to its chin to cover its obscenely huge belly. Smaller gristers crawled in and out of the rolls of its fat. It rubbed itself with a pudgy claw, making that groaning, gurgling sound which seemed almost sexual. It was terrible. All I felt was a sick revulsion and disgust. But I kept in mind one thing, that I'd been looking for a picture of these things. So I busted out my camera phone and snapped a picture. I wish I hadn't. If I hadn't, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. The moment I snapped the picture, the thing stopped groaning and swiveled its head towards me. All the gristers did, in fact. They started hissing and screaming at me. It was a horrible sound, like rusty nails on a chalkboard. And to put things very mildly, I completely lost my shit. I ran out of there as fast as I could, ran all the way home. Gristers didn't seem so harmless to me now, and that noise they had made was straight out of hell. I didn't feel safe with the lights off anymore. I flipped all the lights on, scaring the shit out of my napping cat. I slammed the bathroom door shut and stuffed a blanket around the cracks again. Then I sat down on my bed and looked at the picture I had taken. There it was, clear as day, that huge grister. Just looking at it made me feel sick. Of course, I was going to post it on X. I loaded it onto my computer and sent an email to John with the subject, "Will you look at this fat fuck?" Then I immediately came onto X and began typing up my thread, explaining myself, explaining the gristers, explaining the photograph. I was ready to post when John sent me a message. "Yo, don't show this shit to anyone." I stopped. I replied to John, asking him what he was talking about. He said that he thought he had figured out what was making the gristers around him more hostile. He said that he thought when they figured out that you could see them, they started getting more aggressive. He showed me scratches he had all down his arm from them clawing at him all night. He said that he'd seen a lot more of the bigger ones hanging around his house at night. They watched him through his windows. They knew. They knew he could see them, and they didn't like it. And now, I was pretty sure that they knew I could see them too. So what did I do? In the end, I didn't post the picture. I wasn't too intimidated, but it probably saved a lot of you. I didn't want to trigger anyone else into being able to see these guys if it had dangerous consequences down the road. I didn't notice any behavior changes right away. For a while, in fact. For about 2 weeks, the gristers acted just the same as they had before. I was beginning to think that John's problem was his own thing, and that the gristers didn't know or care that I could see them. And then things started happening so fast. I woke up one night and there were 4 of them, just perched around my bed, staring at me. I freaked the fuck out and swept them away, and they just hissed that terrible noise at me and ran away. I emailed this to John, who I hadn't talked to otherwise, but he didn't respond. We hadn't talked since I told him about the picture, and even rarely before then. After 2 days, during which the gristers began touching me in my sleep, I got an answer, but it was the last thing I wanted to read. John was dead. His brother had the password to his email and was letting all of his internet acquaintances know. Apparently, he sliced open his wrist in the bathtub. Had things with the gristers really gotten so bad that they drove him to that? We didn't really know each other very well, but he hadn't mentioned anything to me. His brother said that he hadn't left a note. After I gave him my condolences, a thought came to mind. John didn't seem like the type to commit suicide to me. Now, I had no one to talk to about this. I started looking online for more references or anything. All the while, the gristers were just getting more and more aggressive. I'd look over my shoulder and there would be 1 or 2 on the windowsill, just staring at me. One time, I opened the door to my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor, and there was one about the size of a large dog staggering around the bottom of the stairwell, pale face flashing in and out of the darkness, baring its teeth in a growl at me, pale limbs flashing as it bounded up the stairs. I slammed the door shut. I didn't go to work that day. Then I saw it on the news. The house that I'd seen the fat-ass grister at. I would have skipped right past the news story had I not seen the picture of the house. The article was titled, 8 Found Dead, 3 Alive in House of Horrors. Apparently, some sick fuck had been using the basement of one of those abandoned houses as a place to keep women prisoner, and then killed them when he felt like it. It was a terrible fucking story, but one of the things one of the survivors said really struck me.
It was horrible. We never knew when he was going to come in and decide to kill one of us, when he was going to hurt us. We were just so terrified all the time.
Terrified all the time. And Gristers had been all over the place. And when I first saw one, I had been reading those horror stories and was pretty freaked out. Same for John, who was watching a scary movie. Were these things drawn to fear? Then I read that 2 of the survivors were being sent to a mental hospital for hallucinations. Did they see the Gristers? I stopped sleeping. I didn't want to wake up to more of those things staring at me. I stopped eating too. Whenever I wasn't at work, which was more and more often, as I called out many times when I saw Gristers bigger than a cat sniffing around my building for me, I was locked in my room, trying to hunt for information on the internet about these things. I couldn't find anyone who's actually seen them. The Gristers were getting more violent. They were starting to scratch me and bite me in those few scant hours that I actually did nod off. I'd always freak out and sweep them away, and they'd just hiss at me. After about a week of this, I came home from work and found my cat dead. I bet they did that out of spite. If I hadn't gone to work that day, maybe I could have protected her from those monsters. So I decided to quit my job. I cried for days. X, I don't have many friends, and I really love that cat. They're not stupid, X. They don't talk and they act differently from us, but they do have intelligence. I went out for food last week. It was the last time I will ever go out. I was sitting at the downtown bus station shivering, looking all around me for Gristers. When the bus approached, I got up to get on, and out of nowhere a Grister, the size of a normal human, just bent over and walking their weird loping gait slammed into the back of the woman next to me and threw her in front of the bus. She had no chance. I saw her slide under the wheels of the bus. I saw her blood and ruined organs squeeze out of her like toothpaste. Everyone freaked out and panicked. As people rushed to her aid, the Grister turned to look at me and grinned. I dropped my groceries and screamed, running back into my house, sobbing all the way. They're toying with me. And that's when I finally realized why there wasn't anyone I could really talk to about Gristers. X, how many times, when people commit suicide, do you hear it reported that they were suffering from hallucinations? Read the reports for people who have been in terrible, frightening situations, like that House of Horrors or a war. How many of them suffer from hallucinations? And eventually, they'll figure out that you can see them, and they start fucking with you. And I don't think anyone who they kill is driven to suicide. I don't think John committed suicide. I think they're smart. I think they know how to make someone look like they killed themselves. You'll hear about it sometimes. You'll read in a report about how someone killed themselves, but something just isn't quite right about it. Like a man who went out and bought a new couch and then cut his wrist on it. And X, I don't think there's anything special about John and I. I don't think there's anything special about anyone who sees these things. I think you're just more likely to see them when you're really scared, since that's when they're drawn to you. Or maybe, just maybe, they just occur in my area, and it started happening not too long ago. I can hear them right now. It's about 3 in the morning, and it sounds like a really big one is outside my apartment door. It sounds like it's trying to gnaw its way through the wood, and so I'm taking the easy way out. I'd rather have a nice, sharp knife slice open my arms and have my skin torn by those teeth. So please, this is my warning to you. Stop seeking scary stuff. I know you love it. I know you love frightening yourself, but you've got to stop. Every time you read a story, watch a movie, or have frightening thoughts, every time you get that feeling of dread in your stomach, you're drawing the Gristers to you. And if you don't stop, at least, please, never check out those sounds in the house when you do. The farm near our house had a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin patch on Halloween. It was pretty cool to look at. A whole field filled with meticulously carved pumpkins and their grotesque faces glowing from the candlelight within. There was candy strewn about in little baggies, and kids of all ages visited either before or after they trick-or-treated to get some extra loot. We moved in across the street from that field a couple years ago. At first, we loved the idea of the jack-o'-lantern patch. It looked quite haunting and really spoke to the Halloween spirit in me and my wife. But when Halloween was over, the farmer didn't take the jack-o'-lanterns away. He left them to rot. I assumed it was to fertilize the ground for whatever crop he'd plant in the spring. It made sense that he wouldn't want all that organic material to go to waste. The problem was, they'd attract animals. Animals and bugs. In the unseasonably warm November we had last year, the smell of the rotting gourds brought critters from far and wide to the field, and when they were done eating, they'd wander the neighborhood. Being a small town, there was little anyone could do to stop the farmer, whose name was Reuben, from doing what he wanted on his property. We had to deal with the deer and skunks and coyotes and foxes and flies and bees and bats, all eating, shitting, and fucking their way across the town until no more pumpkins were left. Last year, I approached Reuben while he was setting up the jack-o'-lanterns. He was a friendly guy, there was never any doubting that. I explained the issue and he listened and nodded. He said a few other people had told him the same thing, and that he'd fix the fences over the summer so that there wouldn't be a problem anymore. Besides, he told me with a smile, last year was just a test run. This Halloween, everything's gonna be just perfect. On Halloween, the jack-o'-lantern field looked even better than it had the year before. Even though the arrangement was the same, Reuben had hired some artists to collaborate and create truly monstrous designs for the pumpkins. They were awesome. I even did a walkthrough by myself in the early afternoon before the candles were lit just to take it all in. I felt like a kid again. As the evening was coming to a close and we'd given out the majority of our candy to the neighborhood children, we were getting ready to turn off the light and lock up when we heard sirens approaching. I looked outside and saw a procession of police cars, fire engines, and ambulances heading towards us. I stepped out on the porch and watched as they passed our house and took the sharp left into the driveway of Reuben's farmhouse. I sat on the steps with my wife and watched as lights were flipped on and the field was partially illuminated. "Oh my God," I whispered. In the harsh, overhead lights, I saw bodies on the ground among the glowing jack-o'-lanterns. Small ones. Small, costumed ones. Kids. "Oh my God," I repeated, louder. Paramedics and rescue officials descended on the field and worked to resuscitate the still bodies. One by one, they gave up. Parents were arriving in droves, and the sound of wailing and hysteria filled the air. My wife and I held one another as little bodies with sheets over them were loaded into ambulances. The next morning, it was all over the news. 32 children dead and an apparent poisoning. Reuben was arrested and questioned. He refused to speak to the investigators and he was held without bail. There were funerals and pumpkins began to rot. It was another unseasonably warm November, and on cue, insects began to discover the field. Clouds of flies drifted in and out, blanketing the field in a gray haze as they left their eggs in the pumpkin's softening flesh. In the following days, toxicology reports on the autopsied children came back. Whatever had poisoned them was still unknown. They'd exhibited all the outward signs of a poisoning: cyanosis, hemorrhage, paralysis, etc. But no toxins were found in their bodies. Tissue samples were held for further testing, but the corpses were released to the families. 2 weeks later, the air was still thick with flies and bees. We still hadn't had a frost, and things that crawled and flew feasted on the pulpy remains of the jack-o'-lanterns. From the house, I could see their deformed, hideous faces, faces which no longer evoked a feeling of holiday fun. They were faces that mocked the dead. The incredibly warm autumn continued, 20 degrees above average, according to the weatherman. Flowers were blooming and the cherry trees had blossomed a full 5 months ahead of time. The pumpkins were still there, but mostly formless, having succumbed to rot and the ravenousness of vermin. As the hot November slouched into December, the luckiest of us had started to forget about the tragedy that had befallen the town, but we still got reminders, especially on December 2nd, when Reuben broke his silence. My cousin Ron works for the police department as a mechanic. He doesn't have any access to criminals or official information, but he talks to cops a lot, and the cops like to talk. Ron came over on the 2nd before any news had gotten out about what Reuben was saying. It was clear he was uncomfortable. Lillian and I sat and listened while Ron relayed what his buddy had learned from the detective. The Reuben I knew was nothing like the man being described by my cousin. He'd covered himself with cuts and scars of indecipherable symbols and words. Every inch of his flesh was carved or mutilated in one way or another, something he'd done with his fingernails over the course of the time he was in jail. The detectives learned that Reuben was ready to talk when he began to scream the names of each dead child. Just after midnight on the 2nd, he shouted each first, middle, and last name until his voice was hoarse. Detectives stood on the other side of his cell and transcribed what he said. They didn't understand most of it, but it was better than nothing. The main takeaway was a date and time, December 5th, 11 p.m. No one could figure out what he meant by it, so there was a lot of speculation. All the police could do was park a unit over by the farm overnight just in case he had something planned. On the 5th, I sat with Lillian and Ron on the front porch and stared at the black field in front of us. 11 o'clock came, and nothing happened. We waited for a few minutes. I saw the cop across the street standing next to his car, smoking a cigarette. As we were getting ready to go inside, I saw something flicker in the field, a tiny flame. "Look," I told the others and pointed. They saw it too. More flickers came into view. "Hey!" I yelled to the cop and kept pointing at the field. The cop snuffed out his cigarette and walked around the barn to take a look. He got to the side of the field, then raised his radio to call for backup. As we watched, the flickers intensified, as if they were from new candles that finally started properly burning their wicks after sputtering and threatening to go out. After only a couple minutes, more police cars arrived. I got up and started to cross the street. I needed to see what was going on. "Don't," said Lillian as she grabbed my hand, but I shrugged her off and headed towards the fence. I heard Ron walking behind me. The police arrived and lit the field up with their searchlights. We could see the rotting pumpkins sitting in the field, all with single candles sticking out of them. They were shaking. One by one, candles fell and hit the dry straw. The straw ignited. Police officers called for emergency assistance from the fire department, but there was no chance they'd get there in time. The fire began to rage. Entombed in flame, the rotting pumpkins started to burst. Only after their pulpy bodies had disintegrated did we see what was inside. "Oh my fucking God," Ron half whispered and half prayed. In the place of each pumpkin, there was a small, human-shaped thing sitting with its head down and its knees clutched to its chest. The heat intensified further and I backed up, but I saw it all. One by one, the things rose on sturdy legs and stood erect. They were growing, and soon they reached the size of the children who died. Their skin began to char, and they walked out of the flames toward the crowd of police officers. Without any idea what to do, but terrified out of their minds, some began to shoot. The bullets did not stop them. Round after round tore through the fire-spawned children, exiting their backs, legs, and hands in a geyser of gore, but they walked ever forward. Soon, the officers who'd fired fell to the ground. They didn't move for a second, but they started to rot, just like the pumpkins. Another officer backed away. I'd backed all the way up to my house and watched from the doorway with my wife and cousin. We were horrified. A procession of children walked down the street, followed by the police cars. Firefighters worked to put out the blazing field, and after a little while, they succeeded. Ron turned on his police scanner and we sat in the living room, listening with horror as news of dead cops and other officials came in.
The children have reached the prison. The children have burned through the cell of Reuben Rendell. The children are carrying Rendell back the way they came.
"Oh fuck," I said, and I opened the front door. They were coming back down the street, a procession of blackened, smoldering kids carrying a burning man. Reuben, and he was screaming. "It's almost done! It's almost finished!" he screamed with peals of hysterical laughter as he burned. The children carried him to the field and placed him in the center. They then placed himself in the same spots as the pumpkins from which they emerged. Most had gone out, while some still glowed with dull red fire. Before Reuben burned to death, he unleashed one final scream. "Please accept this offering. Is this enough? Is this what you needed? See me through. See me through." There was no sound from him after that final word. Nothing but the crackling of dying flames. The following days were a whirlwind of investigations, media visits, and speculation. No one knew what happened. No one knew what Reuben had done, and for a while it was still a mystery how the kids had been poisoned in the first place. A mystery, that is, until Jasmine McCrae, the mother of a child who was fortunate enough to have been too sick to trick-or-treat, found a small letter in her son's toy chest. It read, "For a special night of Halloween fun, draw this little picture on a piece of paper and swallow it. then come to Farmer Reuben's pumpkin patch to trick or treat. You will never, ever want to leave. The picture was of an inverted star, a pentagram. Jasmine's son told her Reuben had given them to kids at recess one day, after he talked to the classes about what it was like to be a farmer. He came to them individually and made them promise to throw it away after they read it and not to tell their parents. Jasmine gave the letter to the police and then told the media. While the superstitious residents of the town took that as an answer to what had happened, skeptics like myself just couldn't believe it. Even after what I'd seen, I couldn't believe something supernatural had occurred. But then the photographs came in. The aerial photographs from the news helicopter the day after the Holocaust at the field. Clearly marked in carbon and ash was the shape of a pentagram, the exact shape the pumpkins had been arranged in. No one had noticed it from the ground. And at the center of the pentagram, where Reuben had screamed his final, pleading prayer, 4 words were burnt into the dirt. The answer to the old farmer's prayers.
Not enough. Never enough.
Net Nostalgia Forum, television, local. Skyshell 033, subject, Candle Cove local kids show? Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at weird times, like 4 p.m. Mike Painter 65. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Skyshell 033. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls. Real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll. Looked like an antique that didn't belong on his body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Jaren 2005. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what you mean, Skyshell. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and watched it with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was Calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Skyshell 033. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face. When the lower jaw submerged, it looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden/plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Mike Painter 65. I remember it now too. Do you remember this part, Skyshell? You have to go inside. Skyshell 033. Ugh, Mike. I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in. Like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on the Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his 2 eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel. Jaren 2005. That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he only had 1 eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then. Kevin Hart. Jesus H. Christ, a skin taker? What kind of a kid's show were we watching? I seriously could not look up at the screen when the skin taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings. Just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty. Skyshell 33. Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Wasn't that supposed to be children's skin? Mike Painter 65. Yeah, I think so. Remember his mouth didn't open and close, his jaw just slid back and forth? I remember that little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the skin taker didn't look at the girl but at the camera and said,
To grind your skin.
Skyshell 033. I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended and the show faded in from black. And all the other characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces. They were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically, and just all screaming and screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she'd been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin Hart. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. Skyshell 33. No, that's not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin Hart. Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you say that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren, 2005. Oh God, yeah. The little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shake, and the skin taker screaming through his gnashing teeth, his jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off of its wire hinges. I turned it off, and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike Painter 65. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. And she said, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom,' and then you would just tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show." I heard recently that there's a new killer. I was surprised when I heard it for the first time. I first thought that it was just a crazy fan of Jeff the Killer because of her appearance. But after doing a thorough investigation of her, I discovered that it was worse than a monster. Things didn't go well after that. I read it from a local newspaper. Strange and unexplained murders have increased for several months. They had investigated that the suspect was a killer. The investigators found a witness who said that it's not only one killer, but two killers. He said that both of them are attacking different cities. It's still completely unknown if they worked together or separately, but luckily I was able to find another witness from the hospital. He told me what happened. Here's what the witness said.
It happened one night. I was walking from my work to home and I was alone in the streets. Then I decided to take a shortcut because I wanted to get home quickly. But it was a big mistake. When I was already halfway to my home, I began to feel that I was being watched and I heard footsteps. I turned around quickly to make sure that a thief wasn't following me, but there was no one there. So I just thought that it was my imagination. I continued walking, but the feeling of being watched became stronger, and I heard footsteps close. Suddenly, I saw a black-haired girl with a magenta streak in her hair. She looks like she's 16 or 17, though her face did not look like a human. Her skin was very pale, and her eyes looked at me with a thirst for blood. She had eyes that were very wide with a strange, disturbing look. Her smile was so dark, and I was afraid. I stood still for a moment. I felt great fear running through my body. She didn't say any words. She just stood there for what seemed like an eternity. And finally the girl spoke as she moved her head to one side in a way that a psychopath would do. I immediately felt nervous. "Go to sleep, my prince." Then I quickly ran to the opposite direction. I was running as fast as I could, but it was not enough as she was still too fast. Then I suddenly felt her dark presence, followed by a sharp stab through my arm. I fell to the ground with a groan of pain. Then she released a hysterical laugh. She used her knife and she stabbed it to my shoulder. She managed to slice off my shirt, making my stomach bleed. But luckily, I hear the voice of a policeman who had just come. He was holding a gun, but the girl just smiled to it and the police fired several bullets in her direction. But the girl dodged rapidly and she ran quickly while laughing. I saw her climbing one of the houses and then she disappeared. I was never able to forget that face, let alone that laugh.
After my interview with him, the young man was found dead in his house. His body was chopped into pieces and there was blood everywhere. And in the room where the body was found, there was blood writing on the wall that said, "You didn't go to sleep, my prince." Nina Hopkins is an 11-year-old who transferred to a new school so that she could be closer to her home. One Sunday morning, a day before her first day at her new school, she woke up and went to the bathroom to brush her teeth. She went back to her bed and took her laptop to connect to the Wi-Fi. Nina was not the type of girl that was very cheerful. She was not the type of girl that would open the window and let the light in her room and do something productive. No, she just enjoyed sitting down to watch anime or listen to music like rock, J-pop, or K-pop, playing video games, or just play guitar. So she liked to be herself and loved her family and friends. But this time she didn't want to do any of the things that are considered normal. This time, she wanted to read the Jeff the Killer creepypasta for the 1000th time. She adored him. It was her favorite. She felt a strange attraction to him. She had an admiration for him more than anything. Every time she read it, she felt a strange desire, but she didn't know why she enjoyed this strange desire. When she started to read it, the door suddenly opened. She saw her little brother Chris and his beautiful green eyes. Nina thinks Chris is her prince. She loved calling her little brother Prince because when she was very little, her mother would always tell her fairy tales when it was bedtime. She always liked these types of stories, and she would always imagine the princes in the fairy tales to look like her little brother Chris. Chris had dark black hair, fair skin, and light green eyes, like his late father. However, Nina had light brown hair, fair skin, and light blue eyes, like her mother. "Sis, it's time to eat," said the child with an innocent smile. "I'm going, my prince." She pinched the cheeks of her little brother. She left the laptop on her bed and went to go eat. The next morning, Nina and Chris went to school. Nina got up and dressed in a shirt that was her favorite, and she took out her bag. She felt something strange, like a strange desire. She felt a strange little smile form on her mouth. Suddenly she heard her mother's voice and was in reality again. She immediately took the bag and completely ignored what had happened. She quickly went downstairs. "Are you both ready for school?" asked the mother. "Yeah," they both responded. "Well, good luck in school," and her mother went back to the kitchen. "Bye, Mom," they both responded. They walked to school because Nina thinks taking the bus is annoying. They both went their separate ways. Nina went to high school while her little brother went to elementary school. Nina didn't really like attending classes because she thought it was boring. When the siblings finished taking classes, they both decided to find a quiet place to eat without having to worry that students are playing around them, so she found a garden behind the school where there were no people, no teachers or even students. They sat and ate, thinking they would have a peaceful meal, but they heard footsteps. Nina looked up and met a girl much older than her. She had black hair. Well, what have we here? New students?" announced the girl. "My name is Claudia, and I rule at this school, and if you do not obey what I say, you will suffer," she said as she pulled a knife from her jeans. Then suddenly 2 guys came out from a nearby tree. They were known as Malcolm and Yoni. Nina sat up quickly and stood in front of Chris to protect him. "Hey, we don't want any trouble, we just want to have a peaceful meal," Nina clarified. "Ah, I see, but you shouldn't be here. This area is ours," Claudia said as she approached them. "That's stupid. You have no right to make us go away from here," said Chris, confronting Claudia, but Yoni punched him in the stomach. Chris collapsed, but Nina quickly held him. "Chris," said Nina while holding him in his arms. "Well, if you don't want to be next, I'd recommend you to obey and get out of here," claimed Claudia, while pointing at Nina's face with a knife. Nina did nothing but punch Claudia's face. Claudia collapsed to the ground, and Nina took Claudia's knife and stabbed her shoulder. Then Nina gave a strong kick on the crotch of Malcolm. He quickly fell to the ground, but Nina didn't stop. She quickly released several kicks into the boy's face. The boy's face was now full of wounds and blisters. He had a nosebleed. Yoni became frightened immediately when he saw how Nina attacked Claudia and Malcolm. He started to run away from her, but Nina immediately noticed it and quickly ran to him. She used Claudia's knife as she quickly lunged it at the boy, targeting his stomach. "Nina!" She heard the voice of her little brother. Nina immediately turned to him, and she got confused as to why his little brother had a very surprised look on his face. Nina decided to let Yanni go and stepped back. She looked at her blood-stained hands. She felt like a monster, but she had to admit that her killer side was extremely good. She turned back to her brother. Her brother was surprised at what he saw. He was shocked at what he saw. Nina ran to him and took his arm. "Come on, we can't be here for too long," she said. Then they left the garden. After that, Nina went to wash her hands. She knew she must avoid telling somebody or even mentioning what happened. Her little brother Chris thought it was just self-defense, but she knew something else was going on there. She knew that something stronger and more horrible was starting to form inside of her. That feeling of being powerful and strong, the need to hurt someone. The day passed quickly, and when the siblings returned, they sat down to eat with their mother. "Well, how was school?" asked their mother with a sweet smile. Chris stayed quiet and didn't answer the question. "It was great," Nina commented with a psychotic smile. Nina went upstairs after eating and opened her closet, revealing her Jeff the Killer collection. She had several Jeff posters, clothes, notebooks, dolls, and stuffed animals. She took a doll from her closet and put it into her bed. She looked at the doll. She couldn't tell if the doll's sinister smile intimidated her or amused her. Then she whispered, "Jeff, you made me do this." After the incident, Malcolm and Claudia were found unconscious, but they didn't find the culprit. They also had no idea that Nina was the one who did it. She was only 11, so she had that advantage to avoid suspicion, and since it happened the first day of school, many couldn't tell if Nina was there because a lot of students didn't know much when it comes to new students, but it didn't gain much attention. Also, a lot of students didn't know whether it happened on the first day of school or not. One day, Nina opened her locker. She found a note which said,
"I know what you did, but don't worry. I won't tell anyone. You are very skillful, but you're also dangerous."
Nina didn't find a signature or anything to identify who wrote the note, but she knew that someone had seen her, but decided not to reveal their name. Meanwhile, Nina's sanity didn't improve, and she took a knife from the kitchen and hid it in her pocket while sleeping in the room with her brother and mother. One day, when Chris was playing with his new friends in the park, Nina's mother, whose name was Monica, noticed that it was getting dark. So she asked her daughter to tell her brother that they were going home now. Nina went to go look for her brother, but she couldn't find him. She became worried, so she went over to his friends and asked where her little brother was. They responded that a girl with black hair had taken him. Nina became very worried and went home to take the knife that she had hidden in her room so that her mother wouldn't find out about it. She spent a lot of time finding him. She was getting desperate and she hoped that her little brother was in a safe place. Then she saw a car coming. When the doors of the cars opened, she saw something that was thrown away in the ground. She was surprised when it was Chris who was on the ground. Then she heard laughter coming from the car before the car drove away. Nina quickly held Chris in her arms. Her little brother was brutally beaten and his clothes were ripped apart. "Chris, what happened?" she exclaimed while holding the small body of her brother. "Them, Nina, at me to play," said Chris while trying to speak to Nina. Nina tried to control something that was screaming inside, over and over and over again. She felt that she needed to control her anger. Nina quickly took him to the hospital. She called her mother and told her what happened to Chris. Her mother quickly went to the hospital. The doctor told them that he had internal bleeding and swollen wounds were found in his body. Nina's mom began to cry, but Nina just kept quiet to the situation. She wanted to avoid hurting someone just for revenge. The next day, Chris got released from the hospital, but the doctor told him to rest for 3 weeks. Nina didn't go to school because she wanted to take care of her little brother. She would tell Chris some stories and she would help him by making sure he would take some medications. Nina went to school again and she received a new note which read,
"I'm sorry about your brother. I hope he recovers. Never think that you're alone. I'm here. I'll be your friend."
Nina suddenly blushed after reading it. She checked the letter again, but she didn't find a signature. Weeks had passed and the arrival of the school's picture day had arrived. Nina was ready for the picture day. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings with deep red stripes, a sleeveless t-shirt that had black and blue stripes and a blood-red ribbon in her long ponytail. But she felt like something was missing, so she looked in her closet. She saw her favorite purple hoodie, which reminded her of Jeff the Killer's hoodie, so she put it on. She went downstairs and saw her little brother waiting, sitting on the stairs. They both left the house and said goodbye to their mother. The siblings went to school, but this time they went to the bus to avoid meeting the trio again in the road. When they arrived at the school, they saw the trio. Claudia, Malcolm, and Yoni were walking in the hallway. They looked like they were searching for someone, but Nina was aware that the trio were searching for her and her brother Chris. The siblings decided that they had to stay away from the hallway and avoid being seen by them. The day passed quickly, but unfortunately, the trio found them. Nina felt like she was being followed. When she turned around, she received a punch in the face and fell to the ground. Then she saw her brother, who was caught in the arms of Malcolm. Nina tried to get up, but she received another punch in the belly. She fell back to the ground and looked up. She saw Claudia. "At last, I found you, bitch," said Claudia while standing in front of Nina. "This is my revenge for attacking me last time," she said while pulling out a gun. "I don't want to fight you," Nina said while trying to stand up. Claudia immediately shot Nina using her gun, but Nina quickly reacted to it and avoided the bullet. Nina stood up and ran as fast as she could to an abandoned house nearby. It was locked inside, so she climbed up the stairs. The trio tried to shoot her with a lot of bullets, but they couldn't successfully shoot her. Nina went inside the bathroom and was trapped there. She wanted something to defend her. "Nina, are you gonna stay there? Did you forget what I did to your little brother, you idiot?" Claudia shouted from outside of the abandoned house. Nina suddenly felt a combination of hatred and anger and the need to kill someone. Nina looked around the room. She saw an iron rod. A twisted smile formed on her face. She took the iron rod and left the room. She quickly dodged the bullets and hit Yoni through the head, releasing a stream of blood. Some of the blood went on Nina's face. And there, something changed her. Something broke, like a thin thread had snapped. That thread that divides sanity from insanity. Malcolm and Claudia took a few steps back. Nina turned to their direction, showing a psychotic smile, making even Chris shiver with fear. Claudia tried to run along with Malcolm, but Nina hit Claudia in the head. She fell down and Malcolm decided to release Chris from his hands. But Nina didn't stop the violence. She hit Malcolm in the head over and over again, covering his head in crimson blood. Claudia tried to get her gun from off the ground, but Nina prevented her. Nina pointed her iron rod to Claudia. Nina, do you feel good?" Chris said as he felt afraid of his big sister. Nina turned her face to him with a little more relaxed look, but she didn't stop smiling. "Do I feel good? I feel great, my prince. Let's go home," Nina said to her little brother. Nina and Chris returned home. Her mother saw Nina covered in blood, so she quickly went to her room. Nina grabbed her laptop and wrote a note that perhaps no one would ever read. It was midnight. The mother of Nina and her brother were sleeping. However, Nina could not sleep, so she got up. She looked in the mirror and smiled in a twisted way. She went downstairs and she was ready to do the craziest thing in her life. Nina walked into the kitchen. She took a drink from a bottle of vodka and shuddered as it burned down her throat. Then she started to search for a bottle of bleach in the cabinets, but she couldn't find any. "Where is the bleach?" Nina groaned as she looked for it. "Did you look for these?" Nina heard a voice behind her and she turned around and was in surprise to find a guy at the entrance of the kitchen. He was holding a bottle of bleach. The boy had extremely pale skin, his hair was black, and he had a disturbing, bloody smile. "Are you Jeff the Killer?" Nina said. "I've been observing you for a while. I think you've become a killer like me." "You're right, so I need that bottle of bleach," Nina said. "Aw, let me help you," Jeff said as he opened the bottle and poured the bleach on Nina's head. Then Nina felt the vodka running through her hair. She looked up and saw Jeff had a matchbox in his hands. Nina smiled at him. "What are you waiting for? Do it," Nina said with a passion. Jeff grinned and he threw the burning match in her face. "Go to sleep," Jeff said as Nina's face began to catch on fire. The flames started to spread across Nina's face. She screamed loudly. It was very painful for her. She looked around, but Jeff had disappeared. Nina collapsed on the floor. She saw her mother and brother quickly going downstairs. Both of them immediately used a bucket of water to put out the fire. When the fire on her face was gone, her mother called the ambulance, but a lot of neighbors came to their house since they heard Nina scream. Nina passed out when they put her on a stretcher and took her into the ambulance. Among the neighbors, there was a boy that had black hair, pale skin, and green eyes. His height was slightly higher than Nina. The boy looked at her with concern, but didn't know how he could help her. The boy watched as they put Nina into the ambulance. Nina woke up after being unconscious in the ambulance. She tried to move on her own, but the bandages prevented her from moving. Suddenly, a nurse came with her mother and her little brother. "It'll be better if you stay still. You shouldn't move around," said the nurse. Her mother and little brother came to her and encouraged her that it was going to be okay. After 1 month of recovery in the hospital, the doctor decided that it was time to take the bandages off of her head. Her mother and her little brother were anxious to see her face, but luckily her face was kept intact and was not entirely damaged. "Well, Miss Nina, the burns were not severe. You still have most of your face structures, including your nose, but if the fire on your face kept burning, your face would suffer a great deal more damage," the doctor said while removing the last bandage on her face. When the last bandage was finally removed, Nina's mother was terrified at what she saw while her little brother was hiding behind her mother. What is it?" Nina said while she was getting up from the hospital bed. She ran towards the bathroom and she looked at herself in the mirror. Her face, it was very different from before. Her skin had turned completely white. Her hair used to reach down to her knees, but now it was at her back. Her skin was very soft, like a marshmallow. Her family was very surprised at her new face. "Sister," Chris said while hugging Nina. "You still look as beautiful as before," Chris said, but the child knew that he lied to his big sister, because in actuality, he was afraid of her face. "Oh, Chris, you're so nice," Nina said while looking at him in a way that was so disturbing. "But I want to be more beautiful," Nina shouted. Nina's strange behavior confused her mother and brother, but it also made the doctor confused at the girl's behavior. "This face, it's perfect. Oh, my dear Jeff, you gave me this beautiful face," the girl continued shouting. "Doctor, is my daughter okay?" Nina's mother asked the doctor. "Well, usually things go well after a lot of resting, but if her mental health doesn't improve, bring her in and we'll see what we can do." "I understand," Nina's mother said. Nina's mother grabbed Chris's arm. "We have to go now." "Sure," Nina said while looking at her face in the mirror. The nurse handed her clothes back, which was her dark purple hoodie with a short black skirt and black stockings with deep red stripes. Nina dressed up and left the hospital. She went home with her family. She didn't know that she had become the monster that would kill anyone. They came to the house and Nina kept smiling in a disturbing way. Then she noticed a boy in one of the windows in the house. He had black hair and green eyes. The boy was watching her, but he quickly disappeared. That night, Nina's mother woke up after hearing the sobbing of a girl. Her mother got up from her bed and wanted to go find the source of the loud noise. She walked quietly and saw the door of her daughter's room was open. She went inside the room, but it was very dark. She flicked on the lights. Then she saw something terrible in her daughter's room. Nina kept stabbing the lifeless body of a girl. She kept stabbing her with a kitchen knife while smiling. Her intestines and internal organs were removed, and Nina put them on her bed. All of her clothes were stained with blood. She stared at the ceiling. "She used to bully me at school," Nina said as she kept staring her eyes to the ceiling. "Mommy, I'm becoming more beautiful," she exclaimed as she turned her head to her mother. Her face was really bad. Her smile was shocking and her eyes were very wide open. "I got tired of being worried. I got tired of being sad and suffering all the time. Now I'll smile always, and people will see my beautiful face. This is the face that Jeff gave me. Am I beautiful, Mama?" Nina asked her mother. Nina's mother could not help but take a few steps back, shaking her head. "No, Nina, you've become a monster. You've killed someone. Nina's mother started running. Nina quickly followed her mother. "Killing people when they run is funny," Nina said as she followed after her mother. Nina's mother tried to run into Chris's room to wake him up, but when she was just about to touch the knob of the door of his room, Nina quickly stabbed her mother's skull with a knife, and her mother immediately fell down to the ground. "I'm kinda sad that Mom doesn't think that I'm beautiful," Nina said while pulling the knife out of her mother's head. Chris woke up in his room. He felt that he was in danger and he was scared. Nina slowly opened the door, revealing her shadow. When Chris realized that it was his sister, he pulled the covers off of his head. But when he saw that she was holding a knife, Chris became scared again and he snuggled into his pillow. "Chris," Nina said in a whispery tone. Then Nina asked her little brother a question. "Am I beautiful?" Nina asked him. Chris stayed quiet as he held tightly to his pillow. "Oh, come on, Chris. I didn't do anything bad," Nina said. She hid her hand behind her back while crossing her fingers. It's a sign that Nina was lying to her little brother. "You know, I feel so much better now. Let's start a new life. Will you come with me?" Nina said as she got closer to Chris. Her little brother nodded at her. "Oh, good boy. If you want to join me, just go to sleep, my prince." Nina kicked the front door of the house while carrying her little brother on her back. Chris was dead. His dead body was smiling, but his eyes were wide open, so it looked like he was still alive. But in reality, he's already dead. He was covered in blood and had multiple stabs. Nina took a few steps at the entrance and slowly looked at her little brother. "Chris, I'll kill more people and make them all sleep," Nina said as she put her brother down on the ground. Then she walked away to the streets.